Hello viewers, teaching pronunciation. How important is pronunciation for learners of English? That is the topic that we are going to discuss. I'll be talking about the way pronunciation has to be looked at and the way it can be taught or learned by the learners. Let me begin with a quote from Seltzer, Mercier, Brinton, and Goodwin. They say, in the process of communication, pronunciation is of paramount importance. Since successful communication cannot take place without correct pronunciation. There are two views about whether pronunciation has to be taught or should be taught. Before we go to that, let us have an overview of pronunciation teaching. Number one, what is the role of pronunciation in the learning of English? Number two, what is the goal of pronunciation? Number three, what aspects of pronunciation are more important than others? And last, what kind of activities or practices do we need to involve our students in so that they learn pronunciation? What is the role of pronunciation? There is a view that students don't need to learn pronunciation. The opposing view is that failure in pronunciation is a great obstacle in language learning. We need to answer these questions. What is important in teaching pronunciation is to make a difference between pronunciation and phonetics. Phonetics is science of sounds. If you are doing a course in linguistics and phonetics, you have to learn phonetics. But for a common learner, phonetics is not important because phonetics involves rules which perhaps at a certain stage are not important at all. We need to make a difference between pronunciation as we perceive it in day-to-day communication. For instance, stress and intonation, they are very important aspects of pronunciation, which we cannot delay, which we cannot keep aside and teach phonetics rules. We need to teach these things from the very beginning. And in order to make a difference between teaching of pronunciation to a common student and learning of phonetics by a student who is doing a course in linguistics and phonetics, we need to keep in mind that rules of phonetics are needed by an expert and not by a common student. There are some factors which we need to keep in mind. At a certain level or at a certain stage, people tend to pick up pronunciation fast. Adults take a little bit of more time in learning pronunciation. As teachers, we need to understand that critical period at which our students would feel interested in learning pronunciation. Pronunciation depends also on the amount of exposure to English. How much English you will learn, how much English do our students get in their class, outside the class, and through various sources. Another important factor that we need to take into account is the innate ability of the learners to pick up the sounds of their own language. The mind is already mapped naturally to learn sounds of one's own language. Once you learn to the sounds of other languages, one or many languages, perhaps it becomes easier for any native or non-native learner to pick up those sounds. These factors need to be taken into consideration while planning pronunciation classes or pronunciation tasks. What could be the goal of teaching pronunciation? Consistency is very important. Students need to pick up the language as naturally as possible. Another important factor is intelligibility. Perhaps in our context, native-like pronunciation or native pronunciation cannot be the goal. However, intelligibility is very important. Another important goal of teaching pronunciation is communicative efficiency. Everybody would expect the students to be communicatively effective and efficient. If your pronunciation is bad, if your pronunciation is wrong, it will impede efficiency in you and in communicating whatever you want to communicate. What are the different aspects of pronunciation? I'll begin with sounds of language. Native speakers of any language feel no problem in producing their language. But when you are learning a non-native language, the sound system of that language needs to be learned. Here I'm not talking about learning individual sounds. As we'll see later on, we are talking of making difference between one sound and the other in a context. International Phonetic Association has developed a phonetic symbol system. We call them IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet, which is being updated regularly by International Phonetic Association. Stress is very important in language. Not all the parts in a particular word are emphasized in the same manner. Intonation is very important. When we speak, our voice changes its pitch. Sometimes it goes up, we call it high tone. Sometimes it goes down, we call it low tone. This is an important aspect of pronunciation. Rhythm, the music of the language, the way language has to be produced as a normal human being. These are various aspects of pronunciation which need to be taken into consideration while designing a course or designing an activity about teaching pronunciation. Why is this important? All of you must be aware that there's a lot of difference between the way English is written and English is spoken. There's a lot of difference between the pronunciation of a letter and the way a letter is used in a particular sentence or in a particular word. Perhaps you will face no difficulty in pronouncing words like pill, bin, tip, dip, keep, heap, weep, moon, noon, late, zoo, red, yes, and many other similar words. But what about these words? I'll spell them before I pronounce them. C-A-T, C-E-A-S-E, C-O-N-C-E-R-T, M-I-C-R-O-S-C-O-P-E, and C-A-L-C-I-U-M. All of them have the letter C in them. But this letter has different pronunciation. Listen to these words. Now I'll pronounce them. Cat, seas, concert, microscope, calcium. Look at other words. I'll spell the words for you. A-N-C-H-O-R, C-H-E-E-S-E, and B-R-O-C-H-U-R-E. In these words, CH is pronounced differently, which I am going to pronounce now as complete words. Anchor, cheese, brochure. Another group of words where you have TH in them. TH, R-E-E, W-I-T-H, T-H-O-M-A-S, T-H-A-I-L-A-N-D, B-O-T-H, and B-A-T-H-E. Now listen to these words and try to figure out the pronunciation of TH in these words. 3, with, Thomas, Thailand, both, and bathe. OUGH needs a special mention because it is pronounced differently in different contexts. Look at these words. TH, OUGHT. Thought. TH, ROUGH. Through. DROUGHT. Drought. ALTH, OUGH, although. DOUGH, dough. BOROUGH, borough. ENOUGH, enough. OUGHT, ought. COUGH, cough. THOROUGH, thorough. So as you can see, GH has a different pronunciation in different contexts. And this difference cannot be understood unless students are made aware of the sounds, not necessarily in isolation, but in context. Sometimes OUGH is through, oo, as in through. But the same words are of in enough. Therefore, the discrepancies between writing and speaking need to be brought to the notice of the learners so that they do not confuse writing and speaking. Look at another group of consonants. We call them clusters. Two consonants together. How would you pronounce these words? I'm going to spell them. SCHOOL, SKY, STILL, SPARE. Non-native speakers tend to break clusters. Clusters, as I told you, are the two consonants together in the beginning of these words. If you have noticed it ever, a native speaker would put these two consonants together and pronounce school, not school. Sky, not sky. Still, not still. Spare, not spare. Similarly, smart, slow. So we need to make this difference clear to the learners. It's not a question of consonants only. What about letter A in these words? Listen to the words and take note of the letter A and its pronunciation in different contexts. Cat, master, gazette, swan, late, ball, and Mary. You must have noticed that one letter in different contexts had different pronunciations. Unless you make learners aware of this fact, they will not be able to make a difference between writing and speaking. Why should pronunciation be taught and learned? For better communication, pronunciation is important. We need to make the learners aware of the discrepancies that there are between writing and speaking. We need to practice speaking more frequently so that we are able to comprehend not only the native speakers, but also non-native speakers with whom we come into contact and at one point or the other. Students also must know that speaking is less difficult than writing. Therefore, when a teacher plans to teach pronunciation, he or she must know how to design tasks which sustain interest, which make learning easier and more motivating than otherwise it would be if no pronunciation classes are taken. How do we teach pronunciation? We should focus on context, not on individual sounds if they are not doing a course in phonetics. We should pronounce the word ourselves first before we ask them to pronounce. We should also pronounce the sounds in contrast. We can use the board, whiteboard or blackboard, write the words there, pronounce them, and then ask students to pronounce them. And we must not do a lot of explanations because that does not serve any purpose. Instead, we must use the sound in particular context and use them. We must also ask students to repeat a sound in a course as a group. And also we can ask individual students to repeat the sounds. As I told you in the beginning, learning the sounds of English in context or in isolation is not the only thing that is important in pronunciation. There are more aspects to it, for instance, stress and intonation, which we are going to talk about in a later lecture. Today, our focus has been on beginning to teach pronunciation without involving yourself into rule giving or without involving students into learning the various rules of phonetics. We are taking pronunciation through a commoner's eye, not as an expert, not as a student who is taking a course in phonetics or in linguistics. I'm sure this brief introduction to the teaching of pronunciation should evoke a good response from the audience. Thank you very much.